I was wondering what some of the most important lessons you both have learned in your years in business.
Oh wow, there's been a lot of them. I think at the end of it, it's all about, at our company, doing the right thing. So many, if you just practice that rule, so many good things fall out of it. So I think it starts at the top with leadership around a culture about doing the right thing. And then the other thing I think that really has benefited our company is that oftentimes decisions are made for short-term purposes that ultimately don't work out long-term. And the more and more I focused on what's going to work long-term, even if there's a gap or a delay or a delayed gratification around the benefits of that, I think that has always worked out. So the other thing we always tell our people is you really have to think long-term. But even if a decision doesn't make sense in the short run, if you think it'll pay off in the long run, that's important. And then backstopping that, the last thing would be the notion of financial strength. If you're not a strong company, if you're weak financially, if you owe too much money, if you're trying to pay bills month to month because you don't have enough cash flow, oftentimes you can't manage for the long term because you're so worried about what next month's receipts are going to look like. So I think you have to have that as sort of an underpinning, financial strength, and be prepared for anything. I don't know about you, Steve.
One of the things, especially in the environment we have today where the internet is literally turning everything upside down, media was hit first, so, our little consolation is it's going to hit everything else, and it's already starting, is what Peter Drucker, the late management guru, said. He said, businesses should remind themselves, why are they in existence? What is your mission? What is your purpose? And if you ask yourself that, and remind yourself of that, then you don't get quite as hung up on the means to achieve what you're trying to do. In our industry, our model's been shattered, 150-year model, gone, in terms of both content creation and in terms of marketing. And so we've had to do a very painful readjustment. But I think our founder, B.C. Forbes, my grandfather, an immigrant to this country, really believed. He said in the first issue of Forbes, the purpose of business is to produce happiness, not to pile up money. And so we have a deep belief in entrepreneurial capitalism and serving people who want to get real things done, want to innovate, want to move ahead, want to live a good life. Ultimately, that's what they want to do. Then that's what we're in business for. So we keep reminding ourselves, what's your purpose? And if you have to change the way you achieve that purpose, you do it. What John says is absolutely true, easy to say, very hard to do. And one of the things you have to do if you're doing a company is try to create what kind of culture do you want here, where people, without thinking about it, know to do certain things and not do certain things. And one of the things that can happen in a company is things can get very compartmentalized. And if you read the biography of Walter Isaacson of Steve Jobs, Jobs was haunted by what happened to Sony, where these fiefdoms grew up and they couldn't innovate the way they had before. He deliberately designed their new headquarters before he died in California, where people would intermingle with one another no matter what department they were in. When they made a major hire, it wouldn't just be in a certain area. Everyone, key people had to get involved. He did not want that compartmentalization. Had to be a team effort, but the key thing is how do you make it happen? So even the construction of a building can help in that.
Indeed. I have noticed that Forbes Media has always been very good at adapting to where the media landscape is going. How do you see the adaptation continuing? How do you see the media landscape changing? And how will Forbes...
Well, what you have to divide it into two parts. One is the traditional part. It's a traumatic period. And there's a lot of blood on the floor from it. And it's not over yet. But if you look at it from a fresh pair of eyes and not the incumbent eyes that the rest of us have, this is extraordinary in terms of what you see in content creation. It's like the brain. Individual cells don't matter much, but when you put it together, it is profound. The interaction you get on the net now when you do content creation, very different from what you had before. Creating community, things get corrected faster than ever before. Very different environment, and so adjusting to that is and seeing it as an opportunity rather than saying, oh my God, how do we recreate what was in existence 10 years ago? It isn't. And so you have to try to remind yourself, your world has changed, but is it for the worse? I don't think so at the end of the day.
You both have had a lot of experience in business. What do you think is the single most important thing that students can do to achieve and maintain financial stability?
Well, you mean as consumers?
Yes, as
Yeah.
consumers
Well,
in general.
we think there's 3 or 4 things that everybody needs to think about as they think about their individual financial security plan. The first thing is that they need to save regularly. You can't really invest your way to affluence. And by that, I mean you can't just buy 1 or 2 stocks, hope they pay off, and then you're going to be set for life. You really have to take a portion of your monthly income aside every month and save it, because we all know that compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. The second thing we say is that people really need to work with a trusted advisor. You wouldn't, you know, it's the same reason you have personal trainers or you have doctors. You need somebody else to look at your situation and help you do the right thing. And oftentimes you can't see through it yourself, and you let other things that are going on in your life interfere with what you should do. And then the third thing is you need to have a plan. You wouldn't build a house without a plan. You wouldn't take a vacation without a plan. And you shouldn't try to achieve affluence without a plan. So you really need some sort of plan that will grow, change, you know, shrink and grow and do different things as you go through various life stages, but always something that you're trying to achieve that's written down on a piece of paper.
And just to underscore what John said, there was a time when real interest rates were paid instead of the microscopic things we have now. What we have now is not going to last forever. And one of the things to keep in mind, even at a young age where you think it's forever, is that emotions are your enemy. And it's very easy to get giddy, pile in on something, very easy to get depressed when things go wrong and you pull out. And the stock market's doubled since March of 2009. A lot of people got out before that because of the trauma of one of the worst bear markets ever. And they missed the comeback. So especially on retirement money. If you want to have mad money, fine. But on retirement money, money that's going to be used for real big things in the future, steadiness will do you better than trying to hit home runs.
So where do you both think the economy is heading in the short term?
I think in the short term there's a lot of challenges, headwinds, and unknowns. It's very difficult to see how this is all going to sort out, but we have massive amounts of debt at the federal level, at the state level, sometimes at the municipal level. Those are growing as a percent of the economy. You've got a Eurozone that's slowing down. You've got China in disarray. You've got very low interest rates. The only reason the stock market's where it is because the Fed keeps buying up any other security that you might want to own. So I think short term, it's a mixed bag, and it's very difficult to tell. Long term, I'm incredibly bullish on the United States. We have 3 or 4 things going for us that's really going to continue to make us the best, most powerful country in the world. We've got the best labor force. We have demographics are on our side. Most developed countries, including China, have huge demographic issues. We don't have that. We're the most innovative country by far. And then we even have things going for us like what's going on in the energy industry with all this natural gas production, which is actually going to make the U.S. energy dependent for the first time in your lifetime. Energy independent for the first time in your lifetime, which is going to have a profound effect on exchange rates, on geopolitical issues in the Middle East, and on our balance of payments.
Yeah, one of the things you have to recognize is that every 30 or 40 years, for some reason, we do crazy things and make policy mistakes. And the virtue of free people, especially this country, which is very impatient, and people from overseas sometimes say we're too pushy and too impatient, but in one sense it's very good because we don't tolerate things very long when they don't go well. So eventually we get it back on track. I'm old enough to remember the 1970s when we had a whole decade of malaise, terrible decade. And we emerged in the 80s and 90s and dominated the world in terms of innovation. Silicon Valley became a byword, symbol of innovation. And I think whether it's the next couple of years or 4 years, we'll have that again. Short term, it will be turbulent. We're still making some of the crazy mistakes, but they will not last. And so this is not the time to hunker down. If you can start laying the groundwork for the future, do it, because you'll have a much more favorable environment 5 years from now than you have today, I think.
Speaking to younger generations, how do you think that you are better preparing us for the financial and economic worlds?
Well, I think this is going to sound corny, but the simple answer is I've seen it all. So, I mean, what we're going through now is not the first time it's happened in our country's history. You know, I tell everyone I could have told you with 100% certainty that what happened in 2008, 2009 was going to happen. I just wouldn't have known what year it was going to happen. But the fact that we had a major recession and a major economic dislocation is not unusual for the United States. These things happen from time to time. The beauty of our country, and we just talked about it a minute ago, is I'm incredibly optimistic long term. So the other thing I tell a younger person, and I have 6 kids and I tell them this all the time, is things are going to get better. So this isn't unusual. We've been through it before, and I'm a big believer that if you look at history, you can get some clues as to what's going on now and what's going to happen. And the second thing I'd say is that U.S. is so well positioned that long term we're going to get through this just fine.
Yeah, there's a tendency to, even as an adult, you see this all the time, is to extrapolate the present into the future. And in investing, do what is called rear view mirror investing, thinking that what's happened before is going to happen again. And so in that sense, life is always full of surprises. And so don't think that what is now is forever. Things do change, policies change, the environment changes, sometimes for the worse, oftentimes for the better. And so key things to look at is areas like what will happen to the dollar. Will the Federal Reserve finally realize that suppressing interest rates and printing money and then bottling it up is not the way to wealth? People doing things is the way to wealth. A tax code that no human being can possibly comprehend has got to be changed. It will be. 25 countries have done it. And in areas like healthcare, create an environment where you get real entrepreneurship again. We have it in almost every other part of the economy. Why can't we get it in healthcare? And putting more regulations and rules on that are not going to do it. We need to have real free markets in healthcare and more effective safety nets. We do it with food, which is more basic than healthcare. Why in the world can't we do it in healthcare? So big changes are going to be coming, and you can be at the forefront of it. Healthcare seems a hopeless liability today. I think it's going to be a huge growth industry because it's very personal for everybody.
How would you describe the difference between the economy you inherited at our age and the one that we will inherit?
Well, the economy today is infinitely bigger than it was when I graduated more than 40 years ago. And while it's easy to get nostalgic about the past, we had things when I was growing up called card catalogs in libraries. And today you can get everything on the internet. You want to go on an airplane, you can do it online instead of having to call a travel agent and go through trying to compare one price with another price, or going through a travel agent who takes 8% off the top. It's amazing. And in healthcare, huge advances in healthcare. So things, even in a sluggish time like this, in terms of conveniences, in terms of healthcare, in terms of having the world at your fingertips, infinite change from what we had 4 decades ago. And my only regret is I can't be around another 4 decades to see how it's going to unfold. But and then an amazing thing is too, what seems astonishing one year is taken for granted the next year. It was only in the 1950s, which I know sounds prehistoric, but in the 1950s, the whole idea of having satellites in the air and trying to place them in a way where you could send something up and have it beam off of it back down to the Earth. Huge scientific breakthrough. Now we take it for granted that we pull out something and go anywhere in the world. It took almost 100 years to get a few 100 million telephones in the world. With cell phones, we now have 6 billion. The cell phone originally cost $3,995, big as a shoebox. Today, they're almost given away with a phone plan if you sign for 2 years. And everyone, it seems, has them around the world. So, yeah, major advances, but we get caught up in the problems of the present and think, oh my God, what a woeful world. There's woe and there's woe.
I graduated in 1981, and we had interest rates were in the high teens. We had maybe the worst economy other than 2009, 2010. And I had to walk uphill both ways to school, you know, and all that stuff. But in seriousness, so it was a bad economy. I think what's different about this economy then versus then, from a student's perspective, is it just seems like there's so much more opportunity. I think back in that day, I felt like you had to go to work for a major company, and then figure things out. Now there's so many different opportunities. There's startups, there's internet companies, there's small companies. It just seems like there's more different ways to get experience. And what really matters in your 20s is your experience. And I don't mean resume experience. It's getting in the working world, learning how it works, going to work every day, thinking critically about whatever you're supposed to do. And so in many senses, I think there's the generation you're part of has so much more opportunity to do that than I did. I think it's very exciting.